All right, folks, I don't know how I missed this over the weekend because I've been talking about how, gee, if you look at what Israel's doing in Gaza, it looks like they're just, they emptied out Gaza City, or I guess there's a lot of people still left, but they're trying to empty out Gaza City. They've divided it, sealed it off from southern Gaza, and it looks like they're just going to shrink Gaza's borders. At this point, I would think that Gaza is pretty much everything from the number 10 road south. And I talked about that yesterday and how it seems like they're just, it's just plain old ethnic cleansing, even though Israel hasn't said this directly. Well, I don't know, somehow I missed over the weekend there was an allegedly leaked document which has been confirmed already by Israel to be authentic, an internal Israeli document. It was essentially a scholarly paper arguing for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. This was published on October 13th, so this is in direct reference to this current conflict, saying, hey, what we should be doing as a country, as a military, we need to clean all the civilians, all the people out of Gaza, depopulate it, not one person left, push them all into the Sinai Desert, and then we'll have total control of Gaza. And so, according to the Israeli government, they're not saying that this is their official policy, but they are saying that this is something that they produced internally, and it was not supposed to be leaked to the press. Now, I find that hard to believe. Why would they confirm that this thing is real if it's a leak? Why would you not just deny everything? It's kind of strange. I mean, maybe it's just that the Israelis are willing to be transparent. And, the Israelis have said a lot of things that, if they were held to a normal standard like any other country, would sound really, really bad. But for some reason, when Netanyahu says on TV that, we have to support Hamas because if we allow, a moderate faction to gain control, in the Palestinian territories, well, then we'll have to negotiate with them and we'll look really bad. But whereas as long as you have bad guys like Hamas, it can help us justify doing almost anything to these people. So if he gets away with saying things like that, I guess they can get away with saying things like this. It could just be the pure hubris of it. And so I don't even really feel the need to go over this plan. I'll link to a Zero Hedge article about it. The plan is pretty much just what has transpired so far. They said, hey, we want to launch an attack on Hamas, and then we want to order all the civilians to get out of the way, for ostensibly humanitarian purposes. Then, once the people are out, we need to seal off the roads going north and south so that people can't get back into Gaza City, and we need to push them all down towards Rafah, which is the city along the, on the Egyptian border, and slowly we'll just be pushing them into a tighter and tighter area until, eventually you pop the zit and they just spill out into Egypt. And they'll have to cross the Sinai Desert over the course of 40 days and 40 nights until they reach Cairo, presumably. So at this point, I'm feeling much more confident in what I've been talking about this week regarding the situation in Gaza. It seems that this is indeed what they're trying to do. And so at this point, I'm going to say almost for certain, Gaza City will never be repopulated. The people who have left there are never going to be allowed back. There's already no right of return for the Palestinians who have been ethnically cleansed from Gaza City. But there are, unfortunately for Israel, a lot of people left in the city who they have yet to kill or expel. But something that this plan talks about is the phony humanitarian corridors, which, after, let's say, waves of Israeli bombings and violence, in which people have been, essentially driven insane, who are still there, who haven't died yet, who are, going to go crazy, thinking about, oh my gosh, is my apartment building going to be blown up next? Am I going to just die in my sleep? Is the building going to collapse on top of me? Israel will have these brief respites where they open humanitarian corridors, perhaps, and say, you know what, no, let's let people go, leave the city to the south, and head south. And they will expect the population to flood out of there, and so they'll just keep tightening the screws more and more until they squeeze every last drop of blood out of the rock that is Gaza City. And then once all the people have moved south, well, we know that Israel has continued to bomb down there as well. People are being killed in bombing in southern Gaza. But it's not as bad as it is up north. So presumably once the city, which again it's not the north half, it's not 50%. It's like a quarter to 1/3 geographically, as I said yesterday. Once that has been emptied out, I would think that their firepower will just shift to the south, and they will attempt to push these people into Egypt and create such a terrible situation for them that the Egyptians, I guess this is Israel's plan, I don't know if it's going to work, that the Egyptians will finally be forced to let Israel win and let all of these people be pushed into their country. Israel's surplus humanity will be dumped on Egypt's doorstep. That's the plan. In which case Gaza will be completely depopulated, and you'll have a huge new area opened up for Israeli settlement. And so let's say that this all goes according to Israel's plan as outlined in this paper, and the Palestinians are driven into the desert, and the Jews reign over Gaza undisputed. I don't think that I guess in a relative basis, this will be strategically for Israel, internally, it will be an easier situation to manage, because the shape of Gaza is such that they have a very long border with Israel. Gaza is essentially a thorn in Israel's side, and so by pushing these people into the Sinai Desert, even if it is still a hostile border, it would be a more defensible border than the one that they currently have. Moreover, Israel would gain all of the Gaza coastline, which is substantial in proportion to Israel's overall coastline. But this will likely destroy relations with Egypt, which have been at least stable and not really hostile in any way since 1978 or something like that. Israel's had a very long period of peace with Egypt, and doing this would completely turn the Egyptians against them. Not to mention that the Queen of Jordan was born in a Palestinian refugee camp in Jordan. I believe in Jordan. Maybe she was born in Syria. But you do something like this to the king's wife. That's not something that is going to be easily forgotten for old King Abdullah. Right? Isn't that his name, Abdullah? Or is that the king of Saudi Arabia? So anyway, Egypt and Jordan will not be on good terms with Israel if this ends up going that way. And Syria and Lebanon, already not friends of Israel. Specifically Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, but Hezbollah is basically its own state, so that's more so Israel's neighbor. And so the price of wiping Gaza off the map, literally, will be making absolute enemies of all of Israel's neighbors. And Israel has worked a very long time to ingratiate itself amongst the Arabs, to sort of paper over the horrors of 1948. but this act would reset relations all the way back. After all, during the Nakba, Israel only expelled, I think, 650,000 people. In this case, if they were to wipe out Gaza, they would be expelling 2 million people. It's a lot more people. So this would be a much bigger deal than the famous Nakba that is always talked about. In which case, the only bits of Palestinians who would be left would be those in the West Bank. And then, of course, there are that 20% Arab-Israeli population. But as far as those who are outside of Israel's borders, it would be the folks in the West Bank who are getting squeezed more and more every day, especially since all this kicked off. There's all sorts of stuff going on in the West Bank that I haven't had time to follow. But the West Bank is just littered with Israeli towns all amongst it. And so, the West Bank, their days are numbered, because as the Israeli population grows within them, just like, with Gaza, they're going to get squeezed. But it's a very different situation because they're all divided. Everyone in the West Bank is isolated. And so Israel has been following a slow and systemic policy to degrade the position of the Palestinians in the West Bank for decades now. Gaza, on the other hand, has stayed pretty stagnant. And so with Gaza, I think that the attitude from someone like Netanyahu would be they just need to rip off the Band-Aid. Gaza's going to be a thorn in our side forever until they are erased. And so at this point, I'm fairly confident in saying that's what we're looking at. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.